Outside Yanqiu Gate, you hear Chang'an sound hollow for the first time. Not quiet hollow. The city behind you is still warm like a pot just pulled from the fire. But the fire is gone. No court bells, no morning drums, no long ceremonial calls rolling through the palace gates. Only wheels scraping stone, horses slipping in the dark, eunuchs hissing for people to move faster, and noblewomen's veils whipping in the night wind. Someone drops a gold hairpin. No one bends to pick it up. Someone cries that a trunk is missing, then stops at once, because tonight there are things easier to lose than trunks. You carry one of the consort's clothing cases behind the women of the imperial wardrobe. It is not large, but it feels like a tombstone in your arms. Inside are silk robes, sachets, embroidered ties, and a roll of plain white silk. You packed that roll yourself. It was meant for mending curtain edges on the road. Clean, strong, folded so tightly it makes no sound. At the time you thought it might be useful. By morning it will matter more than jade. You are not one of the consort's favored attendants. You are only a palace seamstress, quick with your hands and steady with your eyes. You know which collar once caught a wine stain, which sleeve must be folded inward, which sachet has a loose thread that should never show. In 7 years inside the palace, the first thing you learned was not sewing. It was not asking. A needle in the finger can be endured. A wrong question cannot. But tonight, everyone is asking questions. Where is Tong Pass? Why has the emperor not summoned the ministers? Where is the crown prince? Haven't Lushan's rebels entered Chang'an? Are we truly going to Shu, or only hiding for a few days? No one answers when the imperial party leaves Chang'an. Even the young princes have not eaten a hot meal. Children who once had warm water brought at the sound of a cough now snatch dry cakes from guards' bags. You see one small imperial grandson clutching half a coarse wheat cake, choking back tears. His nurse does not dare pat his back. She only lifts her sleeve to hide his face. In this procession, crying has become a kind of guilt. The consort rides ahead in a curtained carriage. When the wind lifts the curtain, you glimpse only her wrist and the flash of a bracelet. That hand once chose perfumes under the lamps at Huaqing Palace. That hand once touched a bolt of silk and laughed that the color was too loud. Now it grips the carriage rail until the knuckles whiten, like the hand of any refugee. But she cannot be any refugee. Others may be covered in dust. Others may throw away their boxes. Others may trade a gold hairpin for water. She cannot. She is the precious consort. As long as she sits inside that carriage, she must still be tended as if the palace has not fallen out of the world. So your work continues. When the carriage stops, you present a robe. When the night grows cold, you search for a wrap. When dust gathers on her collar, you brush it away gently, as if this were not a flight from the capital, but a spring excursion. By the time you reach Shenyang, the soldiers' eyes have changed. They no longer look only at the road. They look at the carriages, at the trunks, at the eunuchs, at the Yang family wagons. Some curse under their breath, the words hidden under the steam from the horses' noses. Some ask where the food is. Some say, 3 days. 3 days following the Son of Heaven, and not even a bowl of porridge. You pass them with the clothing case in your arms, and smell sweat trapped beneath leather armor, mud, old blood, and something more dangerous, hunger turning into anger. The matron of the wardrobe grips your wrist. Eyes down, she whispers. Walk forward. Do not look at them. You obey. But you still see one soldier's shoe. The sole has split open. A hemp cord has been tied around it, dark with blood and mud. You know that not laborers in the palace tie their shoes like that when they carry heavy chests. Cheap, strong, ugly. Suddenly you remember your father wearing shoes like that when he walked you to the ward gate on the day you entered the palace. Back then, you thought the palace was far from the human world. Now you understand. One lost war is enough to uproot the palace walls and throw them onto the road for everyone to step over. Then you reach Mawei Station. It is a small relay station, low-walled, with trees in the yard and deep tracks carved into the earth by wheels and hooves. Everyone thinks you will only rest here, change horses, boil water. Let the emperor escape the dust for a moment. But before the water heats, the shouting begins. At first, it is not killing. It is argument. Foreign envoys stop Yang Guifei's horse and ask how the army is supposed to march without food. Before he can answer, soldiers nearby begin shouting that he is plotting treason with foreigners. The first shout is like a stone dropped into a well. The second and third follow at once. Then the whole yard roars. You stand in a side room with a broken clasp in your fingers. You hear armor plates clashing, horses screaming, men surging toward one place as if driven by fire. The wardrobe matron orders you to bar the door. You push the wooden bolt into place. A moment later, someone slams against the other side. The door shakes through your shoulder. A young attendant begins to cry. You clap your hand over her mouth. Her name is a lie. She entered the palace only 2 years ago. She has not yet learned how to be afraid without making a sound. Her teeth knock against your palm outside. People are running, begging, shouting that Yang Guifei is dead. The word dead enters the station faster than dust. Then come more names. This member of the Yang clan. That lady's son, the one on horseback. The one hiding behind the gate. You cannot hear all of it. You understand only one thing. The soldiers are not killing one man. They are killing a surname. That surname once made roads clear. Officials kneel, provinces send grain, and palace women lower their eyes. Now it is a piece of burning iron. Whoever touches it will be burned through. Ali trembles under your hand. Around her neck hangs a small wooden tag from the wardrobe office. On its back are the words assigned today to the consort's clothing case. You see those words, and your stomach drops. If the soldiers ask who serves the consort, who will they take? If someone demands a list of her attendants, whose name will be read first? If the consort's death is not enough, will they count her clothing, her perfumes, her curtains, and every woman near them as part of the Yang family's poison? You release a lie and pull the small wardrobe ledger from the bottom of the case. It is not an official register. It is only your office record, listing which clothes are carried by whom, which case is assigned to which hand. In ordinary times, it prevents theft, loss, and blame. Now it is a thin net around several lives. You wet your fingernail and rub at a lie's name. The ink will not blur. You pull a hairpin from your hair and scrape at the paper stroke by stroke. The page roughens. The name becomes a dark wound. A lie watches you. There is no gratitude in her eyes, only a deeper fear. She knows that erasing a name is not innocence. It is only moving danger from her body to yours. Then, outside, the noise drops. That silence is worse than the shouting. In shouting, people are still fighting. In silence, everyone is waiting for a greater decision. A eunuch enters, his face as pale as paper never touched by sun. He speaks first to the matron, his voice so low you barely hear it. The matron listens, then looks at you, number. Not at you, at the case in your arms. Gao Lishi needs a long strip of silk, the eunuch says. For a moment. You do not understand. A long strip of silk means curtains, hems, ties, repairs. You almost ask how wide, how long, plain or patterned. But the matron's hand is already on the lid of the case, holding it shut. She looks at you with something you have never seen in her eyes. Not command, not pity. It is more like being guided to the edge of a well and told, gently, to climb down yourself. The eunuch says again quickly, there is no time. You open the case. On top lies the consort's wrap from last night, dusty from the road. Beneath it are thin robes, folded as neatly as you could manage. Beneath those is the roll of plain white silk. It lies there quietly, too clean for this place. Your fingers touch it, and you remember someone in the palace saying the fabric was too plain for the consort's curtains. You remember answering that plain things have their uses. Now the use has arrived. You do not take it out at once. You look at the eunuch and ask, what is it for? Everyone in the room turns to you. The matron's lips move as if she wants to curse you but cannot. The eunuch looks at you too. He is used to lowered heads. He is not used to a wardrobe seamstress asking why, but he does not grow angry. He only lowers his voice further and says, it is His Majesty's command. His Majesty's command. In the palace, those words open golden gates, light lamps, and keep kneeling people from raising their heads. But at Mawei Station they suddenly sound very light, because outside the hungry soldiers are also waiting for something they can believe. They have killed Yang Guifei, but they still will not leave. To them, Yang Guifei is only a branch. The root is still inside the carriage. Now, you understand. They do not want a strip of silk. They want a result. The consort is in the Buddhist hall. As you follow the eunuch across the yard, the wind throws dust into your face. Beyond the station court, the imperial guards stand packed together. Some still have blood on their blades. Some have red eyes. Some stare at the ground rather than toward the emperor's room. They do not dare say they are forcing the Son of Heaven, but their armor says it. Their knives say it. The blocked gates say it. Not this, and we do not move. Inside, the emperor sits beyond your full view. You see only one hand gripping the edge of a table, blue veins raised under old skin. You hear someone say that the consort has lived deep inside the palace and could not have known Yang Guifei's treason. The voice is old, hoarse, still falling from a high place. Then comes Gao Lishi's voice, low, controlled. Almost without feeling, he says the soldiers have killed Yang Guifei. Yet the consort remains at your majesty's side. The army will not be at peace. After that, you hear nothing clearly. Perhaps there is nothing more to hear. Perhaps deciding that a person must die does not require many words. The door of the Buddhist hall is half open. The smell of incense ash drifts out. The consort turns her head. She sees Gao Lishi. She sees the eunuchs. She sees the white silk in your hands. She does not scream as people do in plays. She does not ask why. She only looks at the silk, as if recognizing an old thing taken from her own case. That look nearly breaks your knees. Because the most terrible thing is not always a stranger coming with a knife. Sometimes it is an object you folded, mended, and stored every day, now brought out to end the life of the person it served. She asks, "Where is His Majesty?" No one answers. She asks again, "Is it calm outside?" This time, Gao Lishi says, "If your ladyship goes, the army will be calm. Goes, not dies. Not is killed, not is condemned. Just goes. Palace people are masters at making heavy words sound light. Banishment becomes reassignment. Confiscation becomes inventory. Weeping becomes improper conduct. Death becomes departure. You used to think this was etiquette. Dignity. Now those words sound like thin blades. They cut a person apart and still forbid the person to cry out. When you hand over the silk, your fingers shake. Gao Lishi does not catch it cleanly. One end slips from your hand and falls to the floor. The white fabric drags through dust and is stained at once. Instinctively you crouch to lift it, just as you would in the palace, afraid to soil a noble woman's things. The consort watches you. Then she gives a small smile. Not a smile for anyone else. More like she too has remembered an old rule. She says, "If it is dirty, let it be dirty." You freeze. For one moment, the shouting outside fades. The station fades. The road to Shu fades. You see only a strip of white silk, a little dust, and a woman who no longer has to remain spotless. All her life, others demanded that she be fragrant, soft, bright, graceful. Even her tears had to fall properly. Now she is about to die, and only now can she say, "Let it be dirty." You step back outside. Before the door closes, you see her lift one hand to smooth her hair. The motion is slow, almost habitual. The same motion before entering a carriage, before appearing at a banquet, before any moment when she knew she would be seen. But this time there is no mirror, no palace lamp, no music. Only a Buddha with lowered eyes, watching the human world hand over one woman, so an army may continue down the road. The door closes. There is no scream. Only the sound of a wooden fish knocked over. Then the soft drag of fabric, shifting feet, someone swallowing a sob. You stand in the corridor with your back against the wall and bite your tongue until you taste blood. You cannot cry. Crying would make you a person with a position, and here now people with positions die fastest. A lie has somehow come to stand beside you. Her wooden tag is already hidden in your sleeve. She looks at the door, her lips purple. You want to tell her to move away, but you find you cannot move either. After a while, Gao Lishi comes out. One sleeve is slightly disordered. His face has not changed. He looks at you and says, "The purple cushion." You know what he means. The consort cannot be carried out uncovered. The soldiers must see death. The emperor must keep one last shred of dignity. The body must be wrapped, arranged, shown enough to be believed and not enough to be defiled. You turned to fetch the purple bedding from the carriage. It was meant to cushion her body on the road. Soft, thick, still scented. When you lift it, the fragrance rises into your face, the same fragrance as the palaces of Chang'an. It should not be here. Suddenly you hate it. You hate that it still smells as if the old world exists, as if the feast has only moved somewhere else. You almost want to throw it into the mud, but you do not. You carry it back to the hall. You do not look at the consort's face for long, not because you are afraid, because you cannot afford to. If you look too long, every robe you mend for the rest of your life will show you this room. You remember only her hand slipping from the edge of the cushion, the tips of her fingers still carrying the faint old color of flower dye. You remember that same hand gripping the carriage rail on the road. Then, she was still holding on. Now, she no longer has to. You and another servant spread the purple cushion beneath her. Your movements are practiced. Lay, fold, tuck the corners. It is almost like preparing a noblewoman for an afternoon rest. Gao Lishi watches. He does not rush you. Perhaps he knows that some things become uglier when done too quickly. Perhaps he is simply too tired to care. From the case, you take a small sachet and slip it inside her robe. No one ordered this. The sachet should be registered with the other belongings, sealed, counted, handed upward. You know the rules. You also know that at this station, rules are breaking one by one like rotten cords. You put the sachet there because suddenly you do not want her to leave with nothing. In life, too many people used her. Her beauty, her favor, her family name, her blame. At least this little fragrance does not have to be inventoried by someone else. Gao Lishi sees you do it. You expect him to rebuke you. He only looks once, then turns away. Maybe he permits it, maybe he no longer cares. When a dynasty has fled this far, when even death is used to quiet an army, one sachet is too small to punish. The body is carried into the station yard. You follow behind, head lowered, seeing only one hanging corner of the purple cushion. The soldiers part to make a path. The men who shouted that they would not move are silent now. They see the result. One kneels and asks forgiveness. Another sheathes his blade. Someone finally dares to breathe. General Chen comes forward to confirm what must be confirmed. You cannot hear his words, only the armor moving all at once, like rain suddenly finishing. The army is calm. Those words pass back through the crowd and reach your ear. You almost laugh. You cannot. So this is how an army becomes calm. First it is starved, delayed, lied to, forced to march past the Yang family's carriages and its own empty stomach. Then it is driven to the edge of its blades. After it kills one man and still cannot put the blades away, another person is handed over. Once she is dead, everyone may say. The crisis is settled. The procession may continue. The imperial party may move on. You want to ask, what about her heart? But no one asks that. The historians will not. The soldiers will not. The emperor cannot. Once her heart has stopped, only her usefulness remains. Did she die quickly enough, properly enough, convincingly enough for the men outside? That is what matters now. Before dusk, the procession gathers itself again. Simone drags Yang Guifei's body away from the roadside. Someone washes the station yard. Someone waters the horses. The world, impossibly, continues to work. You stand beside the well and wash your hands. Ash floats in the water. No matter how hard you rub, they do not feel clean. Ali hands you a cloth and whispers, your hand is bleeding. You look down and see the torn nail. The small cuts along your fingers from scraping her name out of the ledger. The blood has dried into dark lines mixed with ink. You put your hand back into the cold water. Ali says, thank you. You shake your head and tell her to be silent. Some debts cannot be spoken aloud. Once spoken, they become evidence. The emperor does not appear immediately. From within his room comes the sound of quiet weeping, quickly suppressed. You imagine him sitting there with the road to Shu before him, Chang'an behind him, and between the two, the person he has just abandoned. He is the son of heaven. In name, all under heaven is his. But at Mawei Station, he cannot protect one woman, or perhaps he can protect her, but not while also protecting himself, the army, and this fleeing court. You do not defend him. You do not judge him either. You only close the empty clothing case. Inside it, one roll of white silk is gone. One sachet is gone. Several garments will never be worn again. Yet the case is still heavy. You slip the little ledger into its hidden layer and feel the rough scrape where a lie's name used to be. If someone investigates later, perhaps they will find it. Perhaps no one ever will. In a collapsing world, many truths are not hidden. They are crushed under wheels until even the people who crush them forget their shape. That night, the procession moves on. When you leave Mawei Station, there is no music, no ceremonial guard, only wheels and hooves. You look back once. The station shrinks into dusk like an abandoned box. The fresh earth by the road is still loose. Dust is already drifting over it. No stele, no mourning hall, no long imperial decree. A woman who once made the spring nights of Chang'an seem too dim is left beside the road, as light as an old robe. You understand then that all the rules the palace taught you are made for peaceful times. In peace, clothing has rank. Fragrance has names. Purple belongs here, red belongs there. This person enters through this gate. That person stands on that step. Everything is clear. But when disorder comes, rank becomes baggage, then evidence, then accusation. The consort's clothing case cannot save her. The emperor's tears cannot save her. The glory of the Yang family cannot save her. In the end, the thing that determines how she leaves the world is a plain strip of silk you packed at the bottom of a case. You try to forget it. You cannot forget the feeling of that silk passing through your fingers. It was so light, too light to be a killing thing. It had no blade, no poison, no bloodstain. It was soft, clean, obedient. Now you understand that the most frightening objects in a palace are not always weapons. Sometimes the softer a thing is, the easier power can use it without leaving a mark. After you reach Shu, no one speaks openly of Mawei Station. The consort's name is removed from daily life, like a garment no longer fit to wear. New duties come, new orders, new rumors. People say the emperor wakes in the night. People say the crown prince has taken the throne at Lingwu. People say Chang'an has been trampled beyond recognition. You listen and keep working. Needle in, thread out, knot, cut. Every time you cut a thread, you remember the white silk. A lie survives. Later she is assigned elsewhere. Before she leaves, she returns the wooden tag to you. The words on the back have been scraped away, leaving only pale scars. She says, "I cannot sleep with it near me." You take it and do not ask whether she is still afraid. Fear is not a wound. It does not close. It only learns a different shape. You keep the tag in your sewing pouch. Sometimes, late at night, your fingers find it. Such a small piece of wood, sharper than gold. It reminds you that at Mawei Station, you were not only a witness, you erased a name. You handed over silk. You hid a sachet. You saved one life. You helped send another away. You cannot call yourself innocent. You only lived longer than the consort. And those who live must carry the inconvenient things that the dead can no longer speak. The historians will write, in the 6th month, the imperial carriage fled towards Shu. At Mawei, the soldiers killed Yang Guifei and demanded the consort's death. His Majesty, unable to refuse, ordered Gao Lishi to strangle her. Her body was shown in the station court, and the army was pacified. The line will be steady. So steady it will seem as if events naturally unfolded that way. No dust, no hunger, no door shaking under a soldier's fist, no bite mark in your palm from a lie's teeth, no whispered words inside the Buddhist hall. If it is dirty, let it be dirty. History is very good at turning trembling into policy, death into settlement, and a strip of white silk into necessity. Stop it, scribe. That day the army did not simply become calm. Everyone found a reason to keep living, and they wrapped that reason around a woman's throat. Years later, someone will return to Mawei and open the old burial place. The stories will say her bones have decayed, but the sachet remains. You do not know whether it is the one you hid. You do not know whether later people will make it more fragrant than truth can bear. But you want to believe that at least one small thing did not fully obey the edict. the army or the wheels of flight. Not because it was precious, because it was small, small enough for history to miss, small enough for soldiers not to fight over, small enough that even the emperor, after weeping, may not remember. But you remember. You remember that it once rested inside her robe and kept, for a woman called the root of disaster, one final trace of being human. When you are old, your fingers are no longer steady. Thread refuses the eye of the needle. Young attendants laugh and say, "Auntie, weren't you once in the imperial wardrobe? How can you miss a thread?" You laugh too. You do not explain. They do not know that the thing you have recognized most clearly in this life is not thread. It is what thread can become after someone powerful takes it away. White silk can be a curtain edge, a spare roll in a travel case, a humble thing in a palace woman's hands, and on one dusk at Mawei Station, it can be called an imperial command, a necessary sacrifice, the peace of the army. Later, it can even be called history. But you remember only this. When it fell into the dust, it was terribly white.